Good evening. I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting on March 21st, 2022 at 7:39 p.m. We have 4 items this evening on the agenda. I'll start with the first item, order number 22-100-8525, transfer in the amount of $361,080.93 from PEG funds to Marlborough Cable Trust to fund the operation of WMCT-TV for FY 2023. We all received in our packet from Councilor Ossing his disclosure of conflict of interest. That is on file, and I'll begin by reading the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and Councilors, enclosed for your review and approval is a transfer request in the amount of $361,080.93 from PEG funds to Marlborough Cable Trust to fund the WMCT-TV operations for fiscal year 2023. The remaining balance of this fiscal year will be allocated to fund the total operating cost of $511,080.93. I reduced the capital budget by $10,000 from the original enclosed submission. Executive Director Ryan Mylar has prepared operating and capital budgets that are enclosed, and he will be available to discuss any at the further council meeting. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And I'd like to welcome the Director. Welcome to Marlborough.
Hello, councilors. It's so nice to see all of you. Some new faces and some that I've met before.
And this is your first budget as the executive?
This is my first budget. Tomorrow's actually my month 4 as executive director here.
Congratulations.
And I'd like to tell you all a little bit about myself.
Absolutely,
take
sir.
a chance to introduce myself. So I'm Ryan Mylar, and a little background. I first got my first taste of community television when I was around 12, 13 years old, as I was a performer on a community television news show called Kids Corner at PCTV, which was in Piscataway, New Jersey, where I grew up. And for many years, it was just a really terrific place where I had wonderful mentors and tons of opportunities to get hands-on experience. And I've always taken those memories with me, and it's an environment that I really strive to recreate going forward here at WMCT-TV. For many years, I've managed my own production company, creating commercials and live streams for local businesses and organizations. And I found my way back into community media a few years back, starting at Bedford Television and then moving on to Wilmington Community Television, where I also served as the executive director. In the past few months, maybe you've noticed we've really started to make some really exciting strides at the studio. One of those big ones is going live to television. In addition to the meetings, which always go live on television, we are now able to broadcast remote videos live on television that include sports and anything that we could do out in the field, we can put on live cable. Previously, things were only going to YouTube, so this is a real big plus. And I'm excited to announce that this summer we will have our first ever summer program for youth geared at middle school filmmakers in July from the 11th to the 15th. And thanks to a gracious contribution from Marlborough Public Schools, we were able to offer this program at no cost. It's really exciting. Like I said, I grew up as a child in community television. In Bedford and Wilmington, we had very strong youth programs, and this is going to be a really good time to test the waters and see if there is an interest in Marlborough to pursue larger blossoming youth programs going forward. One of my bigger goals is to create a welcoming and enticing space for community creators to become volunteers, create their own shows, and learn new skills in video production. This model of having community volunteers to supplement staff is somewhat of a new concept, WMCT-TV, and perhaps I was spoiled with a roster of volunteers in Bedford and Wilmington, but I think we can get there once we just extend that open door policy and let people know all the exciting things that we're doing. This includes changing the perception that WMCT-TV staff are the only people capable of filming and creating Marlborough content. I'd like the community to see us as a resource. We have a cabinet full of video cameras, and we have staff that are willing to train you on using all these things completely free. Just like the library is a place to take out books, the studio is a place to take out camcorders and learn skills from us to create Marlborough-centric content. I'd like to conclude my introduction by letting you know about a piece of legislation that's fighting its way through Massachusetts, an act relative to streaming over public rights of way, which would tax over-the-top streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, you name them. You go on your Roku, you can scroll forever. It would tax those services for using the same poles and cables that cable television uses to distribute their entertainment media. And this tax could really ensure a future for community television studios through a new revenue stream. And I'm going to butcher her name, but our state rep, Danielle Gregoire, is in support of this bill as well. So I reached out to her to see if there was any updates, but things are slow to move. But I'm staying optimistic here. And that's me.
Thank you. And I'll open up the committee. I again like to welcome you. I know that's probably good because, like with the PEG funds, we're seeing more residents and subscribers cutting either whatever their source is, and going in future, these numbers are going to be certainly, the revenue is going to be depleted. So I guess that is pretty good to hear that something is going forward. There's always something going forward on something, but I will open it up to any council members for any questions.
You know, if things should get extremely dire, there are other things that we can turn to. I really don't think fundraising alone could ever cut it, but I just read about in Brookline, the city approved a warrant article at their town meeting to explore new funding sources and create a working group that would come up with a proposal to identify long-term, stable funding mechanisms for their community television as funds decline. So I know that from what I've heard that there is great support for WMCT-TV in Marlborough, and I can only hope that if that time should ever come, that we would be able to garner that same sort of support here.
Thank you, Director. All right, I'll open up to the full council. Council Orm.
Just curious, what was cut from the capital budget, the 10,000?
That's yet to be determined.
Oh, it hasn't. It's noted as being cut, so I reduced.
It hasn't been discussed.
So what we see, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but so the 49,000, that's not with the $10,000 cut yet?
That is not including the $10,000 cut.
Thank you.
This is the budget that was approved by our board previous to the mayor making that adjustment.
Maybe, Mr. Chair, through you to the mayor, if I thought you are here, if I could ask what that $10,000 cut would be, because we're looking at different numbers than what was presented by the mayor.
That's a fair question, Councilwoman. If the mayor would like.
Mr. Chair, if I may do a point of order, I think this is similar to when the city council cuts the school committee budget. We can't tell them what they now have to cut. So all the mayor has done is reduced his transfer recommendation by $10,000 from what they've submitted. They will now have to make the decision as a body on what they won't purchase.
Thank you.
It's not up to us, it's not up to the mayor.
Okay, so if I may, Mr. Chair, then
you,
so what we're approving then is less than what we see. We're approving 39, or is it something that will wash out when they decide on the final budget?
We are approving the amount of the 361,080.93.
So and then
there was that 49,000 in the mayor's discretion to cut that.
Have that in front. So I'm sorry, I was being shown something. So with that 10,000, we won't know until your board meets with the mayor, more or less. So, okay, so tonight when we go to approve the bottom line, we can expect maybe a $10,000 cut.
Yes.
In that. Okay, just to clear what's happening, and so that you know too, just in case you see something down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, welcome to Marlborough. It takes a lot to give a whole introduction in front of the council like that, and I really appreciated your emphasis on youth programming, how to get more people into WMCT-TV. I feel like the staff is always so amazing and friendly in the programming and being able to go live. I mean, those are really important updates to keep the relevancy of the program to a bunch of different ages. So I really commend you on putting that forward, and you've only been here for a few months, so I really appreciate that. And I'm just excited to kind of see where this is headed. WMCT-TV I feel like every time they've come down, it's unfortunate there is that decreased, revenue stream, and so I appreciate you also bringing forward that bill. Hopefully, that will move forward. I know sometimes things are slower than we would like, but that does seem to be a really great addition there. And I'm just curious, in terms of any of the other updates, were there any other sort of like changes that are kind of financially? I know you mentioned the schools being able to supplement some of that funding. Do you know what the amount of that program was for the youth?
Oh, I don't have it offhand, I'm sorry.
Okay, but it was sort of funded through, is it a grant or part of their budget?
The school had leftover money they put aside for after-school programs and clubs, and not all those clubs end up materializing every year. So we're very lucky that the superintendent also serves on our board, and he jumped in right away because originally it was a program that would carry a cost with it. And he said, I think we have some money that we can use towards that.
No, that's wonderful to hear, and I look forward to, us all on the council or seeing it on social media, the updates about how that program coalesces and the number of youth that take advantage of it. So I hope that it really does take off, because it sounds like the program's worked really well in the other communities. So
it's a direct pipeline up through the high school, where they have a wonderful film and television production class as well. So getting them started early is amazing.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I took one of those courses at the high school, so it's really great that those assets are available and very unique to Marlborough. So no further questions, just really wanted to congratulate you for all of the changes that you're working forward, and appreciate you coming to the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you, Ryan. I haven't had a chance to catch up with you. But I really do applaud your work trying to get youth involved with cable access. My son-in-law was involved with cable as a youth, and he's now a producer for NBC Sports. He did the Olympics.
Got to start somewhere.
So, yeah. This is you catch the bug.
That's right.
And you just run with it. So I think this is a great opportunity for the kids of Marlborough. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a non-television owner, I've never watched cable. Now that cable is accessible on just simple computer, I have taken an opportunity. And I believe also when you talked about sports, I think WMCT was doing live for the sadly lost hockey game that was played. I did see the ability to watch that on my on Facebook, but I think that's beside the point. I think people that have cable are certainly happy to support it. So, and I understand that people are leaving cable because they can have other options, where to me cable was more that local access kind of stuff, the ability to make sure you could watch the school committee, watch maybe even city council meetings, and to do other little newsy kinds of things that the bigger TV stations didn't cover. But I guess we can see through the years the amount of money taken in has decreased. But I also need to point out that we as a council have approved transfers from this for the IT department to use. And so I think going forward, if we know in fact that their income is decreasing because people aren't watching cable television and the bill that you talk about doesn't get approved, so you're not going to have an extra resource. We need to be more proactive in looking at the impact on those transfers, future transfers that may come down to the council, so that we can make sure we can fully fund you as a very viable opportunity to present Marlborough and all of its activities. Thank you.
I totally appreciate that sentiment. And it's true, most people, we just started putting out a survey, and I hope we will get more responses once we promote it a bit more, that will show, but I've done these surveys in the past, and it shows that most people who consume this media, unfortunately, do not actually consume it on cable television. They're watching the reruns on our website, on YouTube. We're putting it on Facebook for instant access and to get that media out as swiftly and as efficiently, and to reach as wide of an audience as we can, as wide as Marlborough, because that is who we serve. And the tradition and history of community media is important to hang on to. I'm sure that I wasn't here for the bulk of COVID in this community, but I'm sure WMCT-TV was there to make sure that the transparency of government meetings and important announcements continue to happen. And it's there. People often ask me or say, oh, it's just another parade, it's just another high school concert, but I think of it as a living time capsule. It's not, it might not be important right now, but give it 10, 20, give it 100 years from now, and this media will still exist, just like print media. A picture's worth 1,000 words, but how much more can video deliver? So just for the future of capturing what our wonderful historical society does now, we are a part of that fabric.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was able to see our own President Ossing on the ice yesterday. Thank you to WMCT-TV. So I'm thankful for that. This is what PEG is supposed to be for, so I move to approve.
I will second that. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8525, transferring the amount of $361,080.93 from PEG funds to Marlborough Cable Trust to fund the operation of WMCT-TV for FY 2023. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Director. Oh, yes, and I'll ask the finance team if we would need a suspension because their budget starts on April 1st. So, we're okay with the suspension? Yes. Thank you, finance team. Thank you, Director. Okay, moving on to the next item, order number 22-100-8526, proposed order for the establishment of the West Side Fire Station Stabilization Account. I will read the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your review and approval is the proposed order to establish a West Side Fire Station Stabilization Account. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. We look forward to working with you, the City Council, on this important endeavor. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And we did, as a council, voted and approved to establish this, to determine the name of this account. That was back in December. So I will open that up to the Finance Committee if they have any further input. Council Orr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the order states, the West Side Fire Station, it doesn't designate a location.
Oh, no, this approves what we determined. We determined the naming of the account. Now this approves that portion of it.
And to be clear, it does not designate a location.
This does not designate the actual physical place of a fire station.
And the only reason, Mr. Chair, I mention is the previous order did mention 100 Lock Drive. So that was back in 2021. So I just want to make sure that was clear that we're looking at
good point.
A new order that does not designate a location, just designates a fund situation for a West Side Fire Station. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Oh, thank you. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the confusion might be between the two orders. This order came to us because we had money given from special permits that was coming to the city, and we didn't really have any place specified for where it was going. So we did request that this stabilization fund be created. The part 2 of this, Mr. Mayor, is now to bring down a transfer to put the money that's sitting in the free cash account into this account once it's established. The second item, or third item, that you have on your agenda does actually talk about a parcel and does specifically cite. This one doesn't cite. It's just to be able to put money in that the city has that was in special permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roy. Councilor Dumas.
I move to approve the West Side Fire Station Stabilization Account.
I will second that. Motion has been approved and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8526, proposed order for the establishment of the West Side Fire Station Stabilization Account. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is half the order. The other half of the order is the funding part. So again, Councilor Roby submitted the order asking what was this body approved in the special permit, which is transfer $1.4 million when phase one gets approved. They did that. It's sitting in free cash. That money was to be designated by the council. If this vote takes place, you have then designated where you want the money to go. Does anybody see a problem so far?
I do.
Councilor Roby, well, it's not my meeting. So I'll answer
I'm sorry, what's that?
I'll answer the question. The problem is there's no money.
Correct.
So we need to ask the mayor again, please send down the transfer. I'm sure you're going to hear a nice story in the next agenda item. But again, this is part one. Part two is the money that we get to decide where we want it to go, and we, as a city council, did decide where we want it to go. We want it to go in this West Side Fire Station account, because in potentially 3 or 4 months, phase two is coming, which is going to be another $1.4 million. And I prefer not to have this challenge again, so that's real clear. This council has made its position where the council wants the money to go, with all due respect to the mayor, not where the mayor wants it to go. It is the money that the council decided in the special permit. I'm happy to answer any questions if the chair would like me to.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I do thank you too, because President Ossing and Council Roby brought this to my attention with conditions 6 and 7, and as you stated, Mr. President, that Site 2 has begun their building permits, anticipating early 2022 with some more revenue. So thank you very much, Mr. President. Other further questions? So we're good with that. Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, moving on to the third item, order number 22-108-402B-2, proposed amendment transfer request relative to the acquisition of 100 Lock Drive for a new fire station, clarifying the funding source. And this one, I'll begin by reading the letter submitted by the mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your information is a proposed amended transfer in conjunction with Ordinance 21-108-416 for the acquisition of 100 Lock Drive that was moved to the Finance Committee at September 27, 2021 City Council meeting. This amended transfer is to clarify the funding source. The mitigation funds from Phase 1 of the Green District totaling $822,500, and transfer will be reflected as follows: $822,500 undesignated fund to land acquisition, and $4,270,166.66 from undesignated fund to land acquisition. The not to exceed figures of $5,092,666.66 is based on recent assessed property value of property identified to the city assessor's map as map 54, parcel 14, 100 Lock Drive. As noted in my letter dated back in September 23, 2021, we anticipate receiving the formal appraisal in the coming weeks. I hope we can discuss this matter by the first of the new year and look forward to addressing any questions you have. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And this one, as you stated, Councilor, and I will ask the mayor to come up and address this, if you please, Mr. Mayor. I anticipate we'll have multiple discussions on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Obviously, there's not a ton of information that hasn't been out there already, so we put a committee together a couple of years ago. They came out with their report. It was made up of 6 public safety professionals, the Assistant DPW Commissioner, and Councilor Dumas, who was a representative for the City Council on that committee. One of the recommendations, obviously they had a recommendation to do a fire station on the west side of town, and one of the recommendations was this location. If you look at the areas that were covered at different locations, you can obviously see why this was a chosen location. The number that is in here is simply the amount that can be paid for the property without going through an eminent domain taking. We're only allowed to spend 25% over whatever the last 3 years assessed value were. So when I sent this down, I believe this was calculated by the legal department, and so that's where that number came from. Do I think we're going to buy the building for that number? No, I don't. But it was the only, I couldn't just ask for a blanket number. So we came up with this as a number to start with. We're hoping, once negotiations do start, that we can move forward with a friendly eminent domain taking with the current owners, which would allow us to pay something in addition to this. We have no negotiated price at this time. We have not had any further discussions, really, for the last few months while this was sitting in committee, because my feeling is if we have the support of the council, we're going to sit down and negotiate. If we don't have the support of the council, we'll be transferring that $822,000 in that stabilization account, and we don't have to worry about a fire station for a while. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
I'll start, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Two things. Being on the friendlier side as opposed to eminent domain, that'd be similar to getting an appraisal for the like we did with the properties of the library, and that kind of got the pieces moving. It worked out really good in that situation. Yeah. The other thing, if you can answer without any possible problems with any further negotiations, has a commercial appraisal come in?
No.
Okay.
No,
because
we
that's
have one ordered.
Yep.
We've actually had an appraiser go down and take a look at the property. We've also actually had a moving company, a specialty moving company, to go down to the building and take a look because of some of the materials that are in the property. Mm-hmm. The owner is concerned about some of those, and I just wanted to make sure that we had all our bases covered to, make sure it's done correctly when and if it is done.
So I guess there's still some good back and forth, language going back and forth with the city solicitor. However, they're going to write this up to going forward with this to hopefully not get to the eminent domain portion of it?
No, I mean, we had to send a letter to that effect.
Correct.
Basically, to make sure they knew we were serious about it.
Yep.
So these have been all very high-level discussions. There's been no specifics or offers or anything like that at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will open it up to the rest of the council. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mayor, in the one of these other orders that we have, which I don't know if it's still in effect anymore, I guess it's from the one from September of last year, where it says that authorizes the city to acquire the property for a total not to exceed $5 million. So if, in fact, you wind up having to pay more than $5 million, what happens?
I come back down to the council. This number came from the only amount that we can put on the table without going through that process. But it is intended that I will be back down here for a full proposal on the entire site when the time comes.
So why don't we just wait until that happens? Why are
I can't negotiate with nothing. What's the purpose of negotiating if I don't even know if I have the support of the council? If I don't, then we stop discussions.
So if we approve this, but you have to come back with something higher, and we don't approve the higher, does this then get voided?
Yep.
Okay.
I can't, I mean, unless he decides, all right, I've changed my mind, I'll take the $5 million, but, I don't see that happening, because obviously there would be construction costs and everything else, so if the council didn't want to spend any more than this, then it's not going to happen.
Okay, just want to make sure we're all clear on an unknown out there.
So,
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Oh,
So whoever you want to.
Mr. President,
So, councilors, you got to be clear. If there are not 8 votes for a fire station at this location, make the call now and we're done. If we're going to direct, because he needs direction. Is he going to go pursue this location or not? If the answer is no, it basically, I'll be candid, kills the fire station on the west side of the city, unless someone comes up with a different location. So if you don't want the fire station at this location, you can save everybody a lot of grief, because if your mind's not going to change, belly up to the bar and say no, and we're done. Done with the west side fire station, right? It takes 8 votes to get the land agreements, correct, Mr. Mayor, to purchase the land?
it is a 2/3 vote.
Yeah, 8 votes, right?
Yep, Mr. President, right.
Yeah, so if there aren't 8 votes, it's real simple, then there's no fire. So that's the conversation we need to have now. Do you want it or don't you want it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It seems that as this idea has rolled forward to the acquisition of the entire Lock Drive property, it makes more and more sense to put the fire station there, because basically there will still be access from Lock Drive to the fire station, so that there's won't be as much traffic on Bigelow or Elm Street, you know, for that. So I think that this is a good maneuver. I see the $5 million nothing more than a placeholder to start negotiations with, and that's perfectly fine. You said back in December that you're going to have a formal appraisal done. When do you expect to get a formal appraisal completed yet?
That's a good question. I'm hoping,
I'm working on it.
I'm hoping 30 or 60 days, but they've all been backlogged, and I know they've been back and forth with the legal department, so okay. That's a good sign that they're actually doing something on it. But if I can follow up on a little of the insight on why the building, what's the purpose of the building? Because I know when we originally started talking about this, it's the parking lot there that was important. Since we started having discussions about that with the chief and others, it was important for some councilors to get the traffic through Lock Drive. And there's a real question as to whether we can do it because of the wetlands issues with the building and the layout the way it is today. So I don't want to mislead anyone that, we can do it if we're only buying the parking lot. Also, since we started discussions, the opportunity of a regional dispatch center has come up. Mm-hmm. I took the opportunity to go visit a regional site down in Foxborough with the chief. It was pretty impressive. I believe there's 5 communities down there, or 4 communities down there that are together doing this regional dispatch center. There are a couple other communities that are trying to get into that group. If you don't get in initially, it's a little more of a process and expense to get in later. So we've been having discussions with the state also, because there's state money available. They're really trying to get regional dispatch centers. So I told the chief that I would go down this path as long as, one, we were the host community. We find another community to join us, because that's one of the requirements, and see what they're going to give us. And we have no idea at this point. We don't even know if we're going to be on the list that's coming out again in the next 30 days from the state as possible sites. Possible sites. There's a long ways to go between now and then. They have come out and driven by the property, and they said it would be an acceptable site. In fact, they gave it praises. So that's something else that we're working on, as far as, okay, if we were to buy the property, we could have the station here, maybe we'd have a regional dispatch center, hopefully getting a few communities involved. We would be the host community. It would be a dispatch center. So there wouldn't be, just to be clear, it doesn't mean we have 10 more fire trucks down there, 1 from each community for dispatch. It's only people working in the dispatch center. So in the long run, I think it would be good for the city of Marlborough, and I know the state's looking to go in that direction, and there'd be some money attached. At this point, we don't have a clue whether it's 100,000 or 5 million. So that's really, really where we are with the building. I have had conversation with the Lieutenant Governor about it. She was very positive about the site, but again, we don't even know if we've made the cut as far as the possible locations. So that's the reason of going down the route of the entire property as opposed to just the parking lot. Because we could now we could lay the entire site out as far as entranceways and exits and that thing.
And Mr. Mayor, when do you think you'll have any more information that would be the site and another community would be coming on?
There's been interest in discussions, but that's all I can say at this point. But the state will be coming out with a list in the next 30 days? 30 to 60. 30 to 60 days. And if that were to happen, what kind of a contract would it be with a community? 3 years, 4 years, 5? No, they're part of the process.
Okay.
If we were selected, I would obviously come back down to the council and talk about some definitive plans and costs and how much they're participating. And we would also have to have letters of intent from at least one other community to say, we're in.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor Nabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, thanks for the additional information. You know, one of the concerns I've had on this project is certainly not the establishment of a West Side Fire Station that I am supportive of. Just a little bit of lack of information that has been available, which we've talked about just by the nature of the fact that, you know, this is a process, and you can't design a fire station for a site when you don't have a site, you don't have control. But nevertheless, some of those things are my concerns, and I appreciate you identifying the lock drive. I would like to see some of the traffic do that. So. The fact that this building would ensure that, is that the point, is that if we actually acquired this building, are you confident that the mitigation for the wetland crossing would be able to be used, and is that the intention? Or is that still?
What would be able to
So if you acquire the building, you mentioned that that is how you can cross the wetland area to actually use Lock Drive for some of the traffic. Is that accurate?
I haven't given the project to our city engineer yet. But my understanding is we would be able to control the layout of the entranceway a lot better. Traffic, we could come in the other side for traffic for the building itself, for the dispatch center building, hopefully widen a little bit, but we haven't looked at any plans as far as doing anything at this point.
Okay.
All we have is the original drawing that was sent down to the council way back when. That's all that's been done at this point.
Okay, that's a big piece for me when we're talking about whether or not there's support for the building. I think I understand that we can't have like extreme specifics, but being able to move some of the trucks in and out of Lock Drive would be, I think, a huge benefit. The other part of this, and perhaps I should ask this question first, the acquisition of the building, is that more driven by the opportunity for a regional center? And if the regional center in 30 days falls off the table, if the state doesn't pick us as a site, does the desire to acquire the building diminish?
I would say two things on that. First of all, it would depend how negotiations were going. If the owner was more amenable to selling the parking lot than the building. The other piece would be, if we're going down the next step, and I have support to do the next step, then I would work with the engineering department and say, okay, if we own the whole parcel, exactly what can we do as far as widening that entranceway, make it accessible for trucks.
Okay.
So.
I guess I would say, since the president said, you know, this is the time for the conversation, I guess for me, the two big pieces would be, I think regionalization would be great, even if that isn't an opportunity. I think the opportunity to make this site as beneficial as possible, not only for the operation of the fire station, but also for the residents, I think would be, you know, certainly a benefit. So if there's a way that we can do that, I'd be supportive of the acquisition of the building for that. So. Thank you.
And just another point, it was always the intent to take the new station and do our own dispatch center there.
Right.
So this would alleviate the space for that and put it in the other building.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being no expert as this process, but sitting on the committee, I know that taking over the whole building, it frees up a lot of what we can do with this space. Just having a limited space of the parking lot. A lot of discussion in our committee was how big will this fire station be? How many bays? Things of that nature. One thing that was made very apparent during our committee meeting was the fact that the newest fire station, the main location, already was outgrown its space, probably 2 to 3 years in of the opening. I think that's a concern for a lot of the firefighters as well as the fire chief. So in that regards to storage as boats, we have safety issues regarding the lakes and wooded areas and things of that nature where there is no storage. They're kind of in the back of the fire station that we currently have. So to now be able to free up a lot of the land by taking over the main parcel, now we have more flexibility of how big this station can be, because we probably won't be building another fire station for a long time. So if that now can transition to the main campus or the main fire station, we really could, as a council, and hopefully the mayor and the fire chief will really be able to sit down and discuss how we can utilize the fire station now, but also 50 years down the road as we continue to grow with actual storage space and utilizing that space effectively. So I'm excited that the acquisition could be the whole building, but obviously as a council, that's up for all of you to decide. But sitting on that committee, the space, you can never get back. So once you build it, it's that. You can't really add on to it just because of the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Councilor Landers.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sitting here and I'm really quite pleased. You know, we're finally, and that's why I support, you know, purchase of the building and so forth, Mr. Chairman. I think it's finally going to give us, you know, the parcel of land that we need to give us top-notch, first-class, you know, fire station. You got the headquarters, you get room for your equipment. I think the regional dispatch center, I think that's definitely the way we should go. And, you know, land is so tight in Marlborough. You know, a lot of the projects we've done, you know, they've come out fine, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the projects that we've done, you know, we've had to make adjustments, squeeze things in. I think this gives us the chance, all right, to do what we should be doing. You know, we've talked about this for a couple of years. So you got the proper land, you got the proper building. If we bring that dispatch center in, if that's a separate building, that's fine too. You know, all our equipment, you know, you go down by the fire station, you know, there's enough of equipment, you know, still parked outside. And I see a trailer outside down at Station 3. I think this is going to give the fire department, Mr. Mayor, you know, what they need and what we want them to have. And so I have no problem supporting, you know, movement on this, and certainly the acquisition of the building. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
I just wanted to share, I am in Ward 4 where the proposed fire station would be going, and I had an opportunity to attend a meeting in Memorial Hall over the summer, and before attending that meeting, all I really knew that there was a proposed fire station going in the West End. From attending that meeting, I actually got a lot of great information, and as far as what the particular location would do for fire response times, but I also heard, you know, concerns from residents, and part of that being, you know, where the entrance and egress would be of this new station. And so from what I'm reading here, a newer development since attending that meeting and also since becoming elected is this 100 Lock Drive property. And I feel like the acquisition of that 100 Lock Drive property, that would kind of help ease some of the worries that some of the residents did share with me about, you know, Elm Street and Bigelow Street being used mostly for, you know, the apparatus coming and going to the station. So I think that that purchase of the property, if it were to to alleviate some of that traffic being used on Elm and Bigelow. I feel like the residents would really appreciate that. But I also just wanted to share, since I have been receiving contact from residents about it, while I was campaigning, I was receiving a lot of negative feedback about the location. But since being elected, it's been split a little bit, where I have actually had residents reach out to me who do live in the Elm and Bigelow Street area, who have shared that they would be happy to have a station at that location to protect their property. So I just wanted to share that with the full council, since we're all here, since it might be communication that you may not have received directly. I figured it would be relevant.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. I agree. I know that was a big question Mr. Mayor is having, as Councilor Nabin alluded to, is having the residents that live in the area, and that would make the big difference, that having the apparatus coming out through that lock drive. So I agree with Councilor Brown.
And again, when you start thinking about it, any vehicles today, we have a fire on Reynolds Ave, way down the bottom of Bigelow Street. Traffic's going down Bigelow Street to get there. And it's coming back after the apparatus is coming back after the incident is done, after they're done down at the scene. So it's still going through Bigelow Street. And it's still coming down Elm Street. And it's still going back up Elm Street. So that traffic isn't changing at all. The area directly around the facility would definitely have more activity. But the things that were brought up about the lights and the sirens and other things, they're not used like they used to. They're not used like when Council Landers and I were kids, and they blew the alarms to let you know where the fire was going to be. You know, and it was 322 and you knew it was on Brigham Street. Yeah. So they don't do that anymore. They leave the station on Maple Street, and the light goes on in front of the station to let them out, but the lights aren't on and the sirens aren't on until they need to be, until they hit the traffic, you know, hitting on Main Street or whatever. That's when they go on. So it's changed a lot. And it takes a while for someone to see that, and probably the neighbors on Maple Street can attest to that. And I understand the concerns of the neighbors right there. But no matter where we go, there's going to be neighbors right there. So we have to keep that in mind. And like I said before, we were sued for the location of the senior center because it was going to be the worst location in the world. And no one was happy about the elementary school going down next to the high school. And it's worked out pretty well. So yes. No matter what we do, there's gonna be some in favor of it and some not in favor of it. So just keep that in mind. But, you know, like I said, either we move forward with it or we don't. But I think we've kicked it around long enough.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mayor mentioned two things that I was going to mention. I think back when we had the conversation as a city council and looking forward, we talked about the library, we talked about the fire station, and we talked about a new school. The new school and the library had a cap on what you were willing to bring to us. So while I can vote to approve $5 million, I think it's with the caveat that I need to have a conversation about what the real amount of this is, because I think that and if we're talking 20 million, which God forbid, I hope we're not.
We're probably talking 20 million.
Then I think that's a conversation that...
With construction and everything else, we're probably talking 20 million.
You're correct, yeah, I know, but I think that we all need to understand, if we agree to step one, we almost have to agree with step two, although I guess we don't, if the vote's not there, and we know that there's no state funding help with this, it's all on the taxpayers. And yes, we need it, but...
And just, the only reason this is a little bit different is because we're negotiating the property. Right. You know, with the library, we own the property, We had to figure out how to purchase some of the other things, but we own the property. Same thing with the school. We own the property. And you know, if I think some of you have been on these committees looking for space to do things, and you really don't realize it until you're on those committees, we don't have a lot of space to do, you know, the 5 and 10 acre parcels for things like this. We really don't. There's a reason when you point to one and we can't do it, there's usually a good reason. I mean, we went through, I don't know, 14 or 16 sites for the school. And basically they were weeded out one by one, and it wasn't like choosing between these 3. We were down to just our property, and that was it, because of different things.
If I can counter, though, we were adamantly told that you would not do eminent domain for the school, where it's clear you're doing eminent domain for the fire station. So it could have been different properties if that was a piece of the decision.
That's half right, Council. I did say that. Some of the parcels we looked at, 2 of the parcels we looked at, were farms. And we find out that there's 2 different farm sections in the city. There's some that is federally controlled and some that is state controlled. The state control we have a little bit of say on because we can go to Boston and tell our reps and senators to help us. Some of the farms have little slices of federal restrictions. And I know that it's an act of God to get anything done in Washington, good or bad. So I didn't want to go down that path because the farms were the only things that made sense to kind of build them on. But I did say I wasn't looking to take someone's property that didn't want to sell it. I wasn't looking for the eminent domain process. And I'm not looking for the eminent domain process in this one. I just know the price is going to be more than what we're allowed to pay by law. And, you know, we ended up signing some odd P&S agreements for the properties around the library. You know, you can keep it another year and you take the rent and we'll buy it next year. So we could fall under that because we were close. But this one's probably not going to be as close. And I got to, like I said, I want to move forward and get a station built and a dispatch center built, or move on to something else. It's, you know, I'm not, and that's not in any way a threat. It's just, it's been around long enough. We've all talked about it enough, and I just want to know if we want to move forward for this project at this location or not. That's all. So.
Thank you, Councilor Rubin. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the mayor for coming down and for all the comments of my fellow councilors. I know this is an important discussion, and I really appreciate all of the comments. And just kind of commenting on different pieces, you know, I really do see such possibility with the regional dispatch. Thank you for providing the very wonderful kind of map that indicated sort of the gap I saw around Marlborough, right? They kind of a lot more were in the western part of the state for some of those regional dispatch, and I could see Marlborough being a really ideal location, and I don't know why another community wouldn't want to, you know, join in on that type of an opportunity. And then specifically around the purchasing of the additional property, I think easing that burden in terms of Elm and Bigelow to push more towards Lock Drive is really important. And so I would be excited moving forward to see, you know, I know we're far away from what a design might look like, but the way that the traffic flow might work there, I think is really important. And in terms of some of the comments from residents, you know, I do want to really appreciate, you know, all the folks who came to those public meetings and have reached out to their counselors. I know whenever I get reached out to, you know, these are where people live, and I think a lot of the situations, like you said, it has to go somewhere, but it's really important maybe for the education piece for residents to say, you know, how can we bring you into the process and take some of your concerns and show in the design and in our, you know, good faith that we want to mitigate those as much as possible. I know I currently live near the Pleasant Street station. I do not hear it. I do not see it. You know, it's almost like I live anywhere else. So I think any sort of demonstration or kind of showing, like you said, how, you know, people aren't turning on the sirens right away, and there is more of the good neighbor element that I know that Chief Breen often brings up. And then in terms of, you know, kind of what Councilor Dumas brought up, I think that was so key around, we want to make sure this is a station that won't, you know, be completely moot in a couple years, right? We want it to be able to live a long time in the city, and I think having as much space as possible is really key for that. So I wouldn't want to see a situation as well where the price of land continues to rise and we haven't moved forward. So I am excited to see where this heads, and I hope that we continue to bring those conversations, to keep residents informed and know that this is trying to move the city in a direction, because I am still haunted, I think, by those response times and the maps of how long it takes, and we want to make sure that every resident has the public safety services that we all, deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. President.
I'll yield to Council. No, that's all right. I've spoken already. I'll let you speak.
Council Orm.
Thank you. That's happened twice tonight with the president. Couple questions.
Sure.
Now that we see some of the commercial properties closing up, Office Max, I believe, closed their doors. Route 20. The reason I say Route 20, I was in Natick just a month ago,
Yeah.
and I saw that Natick put a main fire station right next to Dick's Sporting Goods, right on the highway. That, I'm sure even the commission that was set up for this would have said would have been most ideal if you could be on Route 20. Was there any consideration for any property on Route 20 that may have become available since the original study?
I think the study says, if you look at it, that going down to Route 20, I can't get down to Donahue Drive. I just can't. I mean, it's going to take longer to get down there than it does today. We're looking to shorten the times. I can't get down into those
you have
homes down
radiuses,
off of Bigelow Street.
I understand.
Look at those circles, and that's what we're trying to address. And
well, and what
I
led
know
me...
it was brought up the old the old HEPA, on Old Northborough Road. You can't get out of there and get to it. It's gone now, but it's not big enough anyway. The lot's not big enough for a station. Some of those, the corner of Felton Street and that loop around thing, that was brought up. There's a lot of wetlands in there, and the property's not big enough. I mean, the committee did a good job in coming up with these things. And like I said, out of the 8 committee members, 6 of them are public safety professionals. So, I'm having trouble, second guessing them. But I accept all the questions because I had a lot of them myself. So, why can't we use the area that we had originally designated 20 years ago down at the bottom of Glen Street? Why aren't we using that property there? Well, first thing we have to do is Councilor Dumas has to get down there and tell his neighbors that we're opening up Glen Street. But the second thing is, we can't get from there down into that neighborhood off of Bigelow Street. And that's a big piece of this. And you say, well, what about the office park? Well, the office park, as far as fires go, we could have a fire in the middle of the campus building on the 3rd floor, and it's not going anywhere. They're all sprinkled, they're not going anywhere. Now, we're gonna have emergency calls down there, and we're addressing that by some of the vehicles we're looking to purchase in the future, smaller vehicles that we can address those things with, and hopefully, I've already broached the subject with Patriot Ambulance about would there be a possibility of housing a vehicle down on the other side of town. So it'll be closer down there. So again, these are real high-level discussions, no specifics anywhere, and they could all fall apart at any day, but I thought it was important at least to throw it out. Is it a possibility? Can we work these things out? But you can't get from Route 20 down to the bottom of Bigelow Street.
And if I can lead on, I appreciate what the committee did. You've exhausted, it seems like, most possibilities.
I paid the chief a lot of money. Chief, come on up and visit me.
How do you like that for a compliment?
I'd rather have you hear it from him firsthand than
you bet.
From me secondhand.
I respect that. So I'll have the question to either one of them, if I may, Mr. Chair. Chief Breen, how you doing tonight?
Good evening.
Good evening. Hot seat now. The next question I had, I know you probably heard me say I was in Natick, and I said, wow, look at that, they put it right on Route 9. Was there any consideration, we're talking about a $20 million plus maybe price tag, and I respect that. I know other towns are building fire stations right now, including Ashland. And they were looking at this, and it didn't work out, but it's still a question I always have in the back of my mind. We're talking about regional dispatch. Were we ever looking at a regional fire station, maybe with Northborough?
There was no discussion in terms of our committee and putting that committee together about approaching or speaking with other communities with respect to a regional approach. Do I think it will happen in my time as a full-time firefighter? No, I don't. Do I think the future holds that type of solution for communities? Yes. Will it happen all at once? Probably not. It might just be joint efforts relative to specialized equipment like you see now. So there's an approach of a regionalization for specialized services. For instance, hazardous materials, the state adopted a regional approach. Technical rescue, things like that. And I think that the success that we've seen with those will eventually lead to more regionalization with respect to emergency services. But frankly, I don't see it happening in my career.
Oh, come on, you might live to be 180, so you never know. But I respect that answer because I saw Ashland Hopkinton trying to do it and it never came to fruition. Right. And unfortunately, there's a lot of weeds that you have to get through, and I understand that. But I was thinking, we're so close on Route 20 right to Northborough. If we got on Route 20, what an opportunity that would be. And it may, I don't know, you might have, if I may again, you might have the answer to this. Funding through the state. I know it's limited for a fire station versus a school, but if you regionalize a fire station, are there incentives still out there to regionalize and get state funding for that?
Not that I'm aware of for fire facilities. I am very much aware of these regional emergency communication centers where the state is, if I could be so informal, dangling tremendous amounts of money to entice people to take advantage of it. The appropriation for fiscal year 2023, I think it's $30 million plus that's available if you want to pursue a regional emergency communication center. And the city has a number of known costs relative to our infrastructure for our fixed communication systems. Much of that can be offset by participating as a regional emergency communication center. So we just, my discussions with the mayor was, again, not to sound too informal, frankly, we'd be foolish not to investigate what we could gain as a city out of that type of partnership.
Yeah, no, I support regionalization, and who knows what might happen down the road, but I respect step one might be with the state to do just the dispatch, and maybe it will evolve into further consideration for regionalization.
Council, I can tell you that if I had a contract, an agreement with the union, a fire union.
I understand those weeds.
Fire station, and we had the same contract from Northborough, the state would jump on it in a second and think it was the greatest thing ever, but that's never happening in our lifetime.
Well, you never know. I know they had trouble with Ashland Hopkinton. I know the situation. I respect what you just said, but you never know, as time goes on. And I hope we can see that, because this is a big price tag, and we're trying to service our residents. But if you can be quiet enough when you leave, maybe you could sneak into Northborough now and then. No one ever know.
And keep in mind, we have a great relationship with our communities around us for mutual aid.
Exactly.
Both ways. So
exactly.
That continues. That goes on all the time.
And I respect down the road maybe there'll be future considerations, hopefully in our lifetime. But you've answered my questions, and Councilor Brown, you helped me to understand where Ward 4 stands, and I truly agree that we would need to consider getting off Elm and Bigelow and getting onto Lock Drive. So I can support this, but it will be based on the fact that, the access will be on Lock Drive to keep the limited approaches off Bigelow and Elm.
One thing that wasn't mentioned, and I feel like I should say this because the committee had considerable discussion about this, in addition to viewing potential properties. So when we worked with the architect said, look, preferably we'd look for a minimum of 5 acres. Can we do it with a little less? Sure. But preferably, they want to start with a facility that we were looking at as 5+ acres. So as we identified parcels, there wasn't a lot out there.
No.
So in terms of looking at Route 20, we didn't have any specific discussions about identifying existing parcels because there isn't anything out there that's 5 acres. It would be, you bought this business, and you would kind of, and the cost of that, and we're not experts, but we've just thought that wouldn't be practical. However, the other reason that this particular site is suitable is we also have to look at the configuration of our existing fire stations. Frankly, if I was to redesign Marlborough, I don't know that any existing fire station would be located where they currently are. And, you know, years and years ago, decisions were made based upon where people were and travel routes, et cetera. The current location would also allow us access to the existing area that is serviced by Station 2 on Pleasant Street. So the further that we leave Elm or Bigelow and we go to Glen Street or Route 20, the further we are spreading out that ideal response time to our current stations. And that's easy if you want to keep all of your stations or build additional stations. But the community needs to look at, do we want a 3-station configuration? Do we want a 4-station configuration? Do you want a 5-station configuration? All of those are possible. But it's based upon response time. So we were trying to have ideal response times. What I like to say is we want fair and equitable services community-wide. So if you want to build a station that services just one particular area, and sometimes that's at the expense of other segments of the community, we were trying to balance that with that location. And you can imagine, being at Elm and Bigelow, you can still go to Elm Street and still respond within the national acceptable times of 4 or fewer minutes.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because being a resident of Ward 3 for many years on Mount Pleasant Street, the availability from Pleasant Street's fire station it's still phenomenal. Right. I mean, I've had to witness that. And fire was there before the ambulance. And unfortunately, without the ambulance being on that side, and I'm glad the mayor brought it up, hopefully we can consider, you know, an ambulance sector down on the west side, you know, more central right now, and that would be very helpful. I think that would be a selling point if you ever decide to remove the Pleasant Street Fire Station. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I fully support that idea, by the way.
Yeah, I would too. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go, Councilor Wagner, did you?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to just, I appreciate the many, many months that they've gone into really thoroughly examining this, and this conclusion that was reached by professionals such as we're so fortunate to have Chief Breen, and again, the people who have the expertise to make this decision what's best for the city. I fully support this. I support our professionals and would like to move at this point that we go ahead and vote. I'd move to approve the purchase, authorize the purchase of 100 Lock Drive for the purpose of building the fire station.
Only the Finance Committee would be able to make that motion.
Oh,
but I forgot.
I got so into it. I'm sorry.
You're on a roll, though. You're doing really good.
Council Wagner.
I was going to second it, too.
You had me. I'm like, it's a late night. I was going to second.
It's getting late, guys.
On that note, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair?
Mr. President.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. President.
Wait.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things, councilors. So can you turn to this page in the packet? It's like 6 or 7 pages. It's the actual order, which I'm going to kind of walk through and kind of give you a heads, little, maybe put your minds at ease a little bit.
What's the date on it?
Oh, right here.
Okay.
There's 2 of them. One has a date on it. One just got the order stamped on it. One's blank. One has a date. But they're both the same. If I can draw, if you draw your attention to item 2. We got to cross out the word stable. This is if you guys want to make the motion, but let me ramble here. You got to cross out stabilization and put undesignated funds. So why is that important? That's important because that's the subsequent letter that the mayor sent down. And how many votes does it take for undesignated funds? Come on.
It does say.
6 votes for stable. That's okay. No, this is important. Stabilization takes 8. undesignated takes 6, okay? So if you read the order, what the mayor's looking for is, he wants the order to allow him to go try to buy it for $5 million and change. If he goes more, he's got to come back to us. So you can say, okay, we're going to authorize you, Mayor, see what you can do. If it works and comes out less, he's going to go buy a piece of property. However, if that property requires eminent domain, it has to come back before us. How many votes for eminent domain?
2/3.
2/3, 8 votes, right? Okay? If you're worried about it at that point, we have to come down with a bond. How many votes does it take to pass a bond?
8.
8, okay? So what I'm trying to give the councils a sense of easiness is, if you approve this tonight, with that word change from stabilization to undesignated, because that's his subsequent letter, it allows the mayor to try to buy the parcel, see what he comes up with. He's got to still get his 3 appraisals, and I'm hoping he's going to come back to show us what those 3 appraisals are, right? And then he can go buy that. My however to this, I will not be supporting this if it doesn't come down next week with the order that says I'm transferring $1,422,500 from undesignated to the West Side Fire Station. There's your first $1.4 million of your $20 million fire station that you all said you wanted, and now, Mr. Mayor, it's time for you to do that. So, Mr. Chairman, the order, even though Council Wagner can't make the order, nor can I, but if you want to approve this order with that word change, and the caveat that the mayor is going to send down the money that this council has asked for, in case anybody's asking, there is plenty of money. If everything that we've asked for in stabilization or an undesignated gets spent right now, we still have over $3 million balance. That's important because we've got a snow and ice deficit that hasn't come to hit us. It'll probably take up the balance of that free cash account. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll let the Finance Committee decide, but that would put you at ease so that it's only 6 votes for this today, but if he needs eminent domain, bonds, or more money, depending on where the more money part comes from, could be 6 votes, but it would require 8. So if that makes you feel a little better that you're not giving the farm away today, but it gives the mayor, unless you don't want to do anything. If you don't want to do anything, cut the legs off and we're done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Rowley.
If I may, to follow up on those, I guess I was going to get into the nitty-gritty of this, because we have the mayor's letter from December 2nd, where he says the mitigation funds from Phase 1 of the Green District total $822,500, and that's what he's using. So can the transfer, which I believe also has to be approved, just be a single line item of $5,092,666 from the undesignated fund $1,035,900?
I'll let the auditor come, but if the order says take it from undesignated, I don't care how he splits it, divides it, or separates it. But that's me. I'll let the mayor and Diane.
Why was it separated? So we'll make Mrs. Smith's time sitting there worth her while.
Pay.
Yeah, but you're saying we're authorizing to do it.
No, I don't want the mayor coming back and saying there is no $822,000 anymore because you approved the transfer to use that.
Right. Let's clear up the $822,000, because Councilor Ossing's been here a long time, and he's trying to split the baby. And actually, it's taken 6 months for this council to take this order up. 6 months it's been sitting around doing nothing. So if I wait for 6 months for another transfer for $822,000 to go into a stabilization account for the fire station, and then I come down for a second transfer to come out of the stabilization account to go into the purchase of a fire station, we're a year down the road before you guys decide to take something up. So what I did is I tried to shorten the process a little bit and take the money out of the undesignated account and have it directly go to the land acquisition. And the reason I wanted to set up the stabilization account is because if you say no tonight, we put that money in the stabilization account exactly where you want it, and we don't have to talk about it again. So you decide what you want to do. There's no transfer coming down at the next meeting. We can transfer it right here, right now, $822,000, and that's why I split it. And you send things to me that sometimes I don't act on right away, and I send things to you that you don't act on right away. So it works both ways.
And I don't know for sure, but my guess is this was held over until we kind of had more from you about the purchasability. We were waiting.
There's been no change in the information since 6 months ago, Counselor.
But we didn't know that.
Other than maybe some of you read the damn thing. That's it. There's been no change in anything. Vote it. Vote it down or vote it up. Stop beating the thing up. Simple as that.
I know we did carry this over to the next legislative session. One of the thoughts was, too, we were waiting for more information on the dispatch.
What have you received in the last 6 months, Counselor, that you didn't have in September?
No, but I mean more information.
What have you received for more information that you didn't have last September?
The appraisals.
Yeah.
You don't have it now.
But we have a whole lot more information that I think made
And you're
people
not getting an
comfortable.
appraisal in a public forum until this is negotiated.
Yeah. But I think it was
And
made
you don't
clear.
negotiate contracts.
But I believe the council agreed to the fact that we set up the fund to then help pay for this in the future. So
We're paying for it now.
we're paying for land acquisition. We're not paying for building it. So you're going to be getting more money into this undesignated fund from Phase 2 of the Green District. We already had money put into last year's free cash that we didn't even know was there, so that got rolled over. So unfortunately, if what Councilor Ossing said, approving this is 6 votes, I think you got the 6 votes, but...
I'm not moving forward with 6 votes.
What's the point of this if...
I got 6 votes in May, Counselor. 6 votes does me no good, and I'm not moving forward. I'm telling you right now. If I don't have the support of the council, forget about it.
But
I don't care.
You
don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm not going to fight with you anymore about this.
I don't think anybody on this council has said no.
What do you mean? You just said either you come down with this or we don't approve it. I'm telling you right now, it's not coming down.
So, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So, Mayor, I respectfully disagree.
You can respectfully
You
disagree
don't have
all
the
you
floor
want.
last I checked, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, one moment, please.
I can respectfully disagree, Mr. Mayor. We've had this discussion. You can argue that we've sat on this. You've sat on the transfer request that rightfully is in the hands of the council that asked you to do it. Send down the transfer. You've already sent down the one for the land. I think you've got almost 11 votes right now to do this. Can they change tomorrow? Absolutely. You know how that game's played. We'll prove the order. Put on the agenda the transfer that you signed to go into that stabilization account.
And that
would be my recommendation.
The west side fire station. So we could technically approve this, but instead of going from undesignated fund, go to the stabilization of the west.
No. It says stabilization now. We're not taking money out of stabilization for the fire station land acquisition. We're taking that out of free cash. We're also taking money out of free cash to go into the stabilization account for the purchase of a West Side fire station, or building of a West Side fire station. And my point is, the $5 million plus the $1.4 million is sitting there in undesignated funds right now.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll leave that up. Councilor Dumas.
Move to approve the amended so that it's taken out of the free cash for the amount of $5,092,6666.
I will second that motion to approve the amended for the order number 22-100-8402B-2 as amended. Any further discussion? Councilor.
I'll ask Diane for the ruling on that.
They also need to include the transfer.
That is the transfer.
That is a
transfer automatic because we've approved the order. The order doesn't say where the money's coming from.
Which is being changed to undesignated. If you look at the transfer.
Katie, use your mic.
Thought it was on, sorry.
So, Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Mr. President.
so if the order changes the word stabilization to undesignated fund, authorizes the appropriation from undesignated fund in the amount of $5,092,666.66 in order to provide funding for said acquisition of pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 43, Section 30, and so on. Is that sufficient, Diane, or do I need something of?
That's sufficient.
That's sufficient. So, councils, that's what you want? That's what you do?
Yes, I just have one point of clarification. This is going into land acquisition, not the West End West End
Correct.
Fund.
Correct, correct.
Just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Councilor Dumas, could you, you're okay?
Moved to approve order number 22-100-8402B-2 as amended from the stabilization account, but instead to free cash
To free cash.
or undesignated.
I will second that. Any further discussion?
So just to go back to the point that Councilor Doucette was trying to make, I think, and Councilor Ossing made clear, along with this transfer, which I hope is not suspending the rules to do, but would be on the following agenda. On the next agenda, we want a transfer of $1 million plus to go to the fund that we just approved. One doesn't happen without the other, in my opinion, but if it only takes 6 votes,
I think that's
there's
for
11
every-
of us.
Point of order, that's for every counselor to decide where if they want that transfer to go or not. I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but between everyone here, I don't want to play Cannon Mas Macho where this isn't a peeing contest. Mr. Mayor, we want this fire station. If you just do the transfer, I'm tired of talking about this. My residents need this fire station. This is my, God, how many terms is this? Third term? And I ran in 2015 and lost. So now we're talking 4 terms. That's 8 years. I've been talking about this, and I'm tired. I can only imagine the seasoned councilors that are talking about this. So are we going to talk about this over 1.4 million that we as a council were able to actually get by approving more apartment complexes here? We're doing everything we can to get the money to pay for this fire station by approving projects. We already decided that. So I'm asking you, Mr. Mayor, let's not lose this and let's just transfer the 1.4 so that we can get this over with, so we can do what's right for the residents and the constituents of not only Ward 3, but citywide. Thank you.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, if you're trying to set up a negotiation to purchase this property, it's better to go with 11 votes versus 6 on anything associated with this. And if something you can do to get that majority voting in support of this, I think you should seriously consider doing that. So it'd make it much easier to negotiate for the actual terms of the purchase. So, thank you.
All right, we'll take the vote. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, the last item up is order number 22-100-8402B-2. Proposed, 8402A-1, I apologize. Proposed order to authorize the purchase of 100 Lock Drive for the purpose of building a new fire station. And this was a carryover from the previous legislative session. I will read the letter submitted by the mayor. Honorable President Ossing and Council, enclosed for your approval is an order to authorize the purchase of 100 Lock Drive in the amount of not to exceed $5,092,666.66 and appropriate these funds from stabilization account. In late 2017, the City Council funded a fire station study to analyze the needs of the city, and it was determined that a new fire station was needed on the west side of the city to increase public safety emergency response time. A committee was then put together, made up of fire professionals who identified a buildable site through comparable research based on need assessment. The council recently approved the acquisition of a needed parcel of land on Elm Street, and the city will now need to acquire the adjacent location at 100 Lock Drive to house a new fire station and accommodate housing, administration, training, vehicle, and equipment storage. The design will be determined and access is intended to be from Lock Drive. The not-to-exceed figure is based on recent assessed property value of a property identified on the city's assessor's map 54 parcel 14 containing 11.64 acres, and is the maximum allowable amount under state law without going through the eminent domain process. Discussions regarding the potential acquisition of the property remain ongoing. Recently, we have been in contact with the state with regards to creating a potential regional dispatch center located in Marlborough to service several surrounding communities. This dispatch center could be substantially funded by the state as they have proactively worked to regionalize operation across Massachusetts. Attached is a map indicating what is currently in place or pending. The advantages in regionalizing include more effective call-taking, standardization of protocol, access to more dispatch personnel for major events, and surge of 911 calls, enhanced mutual coverage, data collection, and most importantly, better service to our residents. As a new state-of-the-art regional dispatch center will be equipped with many upgrades along with the next generation 911 system, as well as facility to host standardized certification training for public safety. The state is moving in this direction, and we can either jump on board now or forced to do so in years to come. Town of Southborough is fully committed to participating in regional dispatch center, and Chief Breen has been in contact with some of the area communities to explore this opportunity further and discuss creating a municipal operating agreement. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And this is just to go forward to purchase it. Any eminent domain would still have to come in front of the council with a 2/3 vote. But I will open that up to the...
Mr. Chair, can I ask a point of order question, and maybe the clerk can clarify? Isn't this the same as what we just approved? They're the same exact numbers with the A and the B on them? Is it just because the first order came in and then the mayor sent down a subsequent order with sort of a clarifying where the money was coming from? I mean, it's the exact same amount of money. We don't want to approve two $5 million votes, do we?
Yeah, I mean, one is for the transfer. You're right, Council Roby, this has that same amount, but this also gives the mayor the ability.
Authorization, correct.
Authorization.
The mayor in his original letter had included both the authorization to acquire Lock Drive and the transfers to where the funds were coming from in the same letter. So I just split them so that one is the council approved the transfer just a few moments ago, or the committee approved moving forward with the transfer. And now this is for the acquisition of the property as he asked for authorization. But it wouldn't authorize both amounts.
I thought Mrs. Smith just said that the order that we have, which was clarified from stabilization to undesignated, also has him to accept the deed for the property. So it's kind of a concise document that covers all of it. It just happens to be the original. It's 402A. Didn't we just vote on this?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
And we were told we don't need to vote on a transfer.
If I can,
So,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The confusion came, the original order came down in September with this transfer coming out of stabilization. The second order came down clarifying that the money's to come out of undesignated funds and not stabilization. The order was never changed to remove the word stabilization. It should have been replaced with the words undesignated fund.
Undesignated.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. That is, thank you, Councilor, that is correct. What I was hoping that at this point, then we'd have more of a discussion on going forward and to ease the possibility that we didn't have to be forced to doing any eminent domain.
But I thought we might have to, because if they want more than 5 million for the land, he's got to come back to us for more money. So that's a moot point at this, for this discussion. I mean, we've just approved the maximum we can approve.
Yes.
Now. So he has $5 million. He can go into negotiations, or not yet, he doesn't, but if that last order is approved, he's got $5 million, he'll negotiate. If they say, fine, we're all set. If they say, no, we want 12, he's got to come back.
Correct.
So I don't think we need another vote.
Karen, hang on.
Councilor Doucette had a question. Thank you, Councilor Rubin.
So I've seen this before, where basically the money is provided and then there is direction on how to spend it. And I don't see, and I don't have a concern of this being a two-step process, where one is basically, here's the money, and then the second is go off and do it. This is all about setting a framework to negotiate terms for eminent domain. So I see it more than just money and, and action. So we'll see what happens when they come out of the back room.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Finance will take a 2-minute recess. Thank you.
All right, all set.
No further discussion. I will entertain a motion from the Finance Committee.
So moved, as presented. Transfer and acquisition.
Motion to make order number 21-100, 84028-1. The transfer.
Acquisition.
So I'll wait, you got a second and discussion.
I will second that motion to approve any further discussion.
So just so the council's clear, it's the transfer from undesignated fund for the $5,092,666.66. That's approving the transfer. The other part is approving the order that has to have the word stabilization removed, that has undesignated replaced, that authorizes the mayor to now go buy the land and accept the deed, assuming it gets it for that price. You okay? Don't give me that look. You're gonna yell at me afterwards.
All set with that? All in favor? Carries 5-0.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you.